And welcome to this week's edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Of course, we're in the postseason. We have baskets still to be decided. The Western Conference has determined its champion and representative in the NBA Finals, Oklahoma City, with that distinction last night. And of course, the world is awaiting whether or not television executives will be jumping out of the highest towers in New York City if the New York Knicks go down tonight. And they have an Indiana Oklahoma City matchup. We welcome to the show one of our favorites to talk about anything with. And of course, 15-year career in the NBA, was part of the original Miami Heat franchise, and probably is the only guy to play 15 years in the NBA and have a brother who fought for the heavyweight championship. We welcome to the program from the Detroit Pistons broadcast team now. The great NBA veteran Grant Long joins us on the show. Grant, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I love that intro, Defo. And you know what? You might be right. I think I am the only NBA player that has the distinction of having a younger brother or older brother who has dabbled in professional boxing.
Yes, and didn't he get I don't know if it was a Fugazi title shot or whatever, but he had like 3 fights, and all of a sudden he was fighting for the championship, wasn't he?
You're right. He was sort of a I don't know if I want to call it a marketing thing, but he's a 7-footer. So you've never seen anybody that's 7 feet tall that's boxing. And his name was the Towering Inferno. So basically, if you fought him, you were going to catch fire. Something's bad going to happen. But he did get a couple of shots at it, but obviously it just never materialized for him.
Yeah, there's actually a new Towering Inferno in boxing now, a welterweight guy that's like 6'10".
Really?
Fundora, yeah, Sebastian Fundora is the guy's name. He might be fighting a good friend of ours and a previous guest on the program coming up in just a couple of months, as he has to make a mandatory. But he is known as a Towering Inferno.
Okay.
But no match for your brother's distinction as a boxer. All right. Speaking of boxing, there'll be some boxing out going on tonight. Let's get into the Eastern Conference Finals, and also the surprise would be that. Look, both Cleveland and Boston. We know the NBA is a chalk league. Favorites usually prevail. It happened in the West. And I don't know that there were many people that didn't think Boston and Cleveland would meet for the Eastern Conference Championship. Both those teams eliminated in the second round. What level of surprise was that for you, Grant Long, as you were looking at the earlier results in the postseason?
I was not as surprised with Boston because to me they had some struggles all season long, and everybody kept thinking, okay, well, they're the defending champions. They're going to ratchet it up come playoff time. They'll be able to hit that switch because they're veteran guys and they've been to the mountaintop before. But that just never happened. The same things that plagued them during the regular season really hurt them in the playoffs, where they were never able to make in-game adjustments. They sat on the three-point line, and then when it was good, it was good. But when it went bad, they did nothing else. You would have the 5 starters on the floor casting three-point shots to no avail. And then you get the guys coming in off the bench who you would think would say, hey, the three's not working tonight. So let us do something. Let us bring something different to the table than the starters. But no, the bench guys came in. Well, my shot's going to go in. My 3-ball's going to go in. And they continue to add to the ridiculously poor shooting from the three-point line. And again, that's the adjustment I thought the Celtics never made in the regular season. And again, it plagued them in the playoffs. They just could not get off that three-point line and get a number of deuces to stabilize, the opponent's run. They just continue to sit on that three-point line. Now, I will say, as far as the Indiana Pacers, or rather the Cleveland Cavaliers, I thought for sure they'd be there. The way that they played last year, a great showing. They improved on the season this year. Everything's solid. Defensive Player of the Year and Evan Mobley. They got 2 twin towers who you don't see in the NBA, in today's NBA, but they were very effective. And they've got a premium player in Donovan Mitchell. What else can you ask for? You never thought, if anybody tells me that they thought the Indiana Pacers would be right where they are right now, they're telling a lie. There's no way that they thought that. I think everybody had Cleveland going back to the finals.
This Indiana Pacer team, it's, as my friend Al Bernstein would say, a longtime boxing announcer, speaking of boxing, it's intriguing in the sense that you got a 5'11" white guy that comes in and then dominates the ball in McCollum. And that's the guy that when you were playing ball in the park, at least when I was, you were saying, okay, I'll take him.
Right.
You wanted him guarding you. And he's an integral part, a key component of what they do coming off the bench and sparking up their offense. I don't know that he's the white Vinnie Johnson. He's not quite in that category, but certainly represents the microwave kind of approach to getting some offense and spark off the bench. But I keep looking at this team and thinking, well, what am I missing here? Do they have Rick Smits on the roster?
Exactly.
Who the hell are these guys?
You're looking at this roster and saying, there's nobody that jumps off the page as ultra special. It's just not. So when you think about this team, you have to go back to the starting point, which is, to me, is Rick Carlisle. He's a genius as a coach. Guys love to play for him when they get to know him. He's been to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Detroit Pistons some years ago, 3 or 4 times. He understands how to win. He's got Larry Bird in his ear a lot of times. Those guys are very good friends. So you think about the basketball conversations that they have, you're getting a lot of great information. Much like if you had, like Eric Spoelstra in Miami has Pat Riley as a person to bounce ideas off of, Rick Carlisle has Larry Bird in his hip pocket to say, hey, what do you think about this? We might try this. And those kinds of conversations happen. So I think it starts with Rick Carlisle, and he's assembled a group of guys, a collection of guys, the right guys. You mentioned McConnell coming off the bench, but he's put the personnel together to play and function as a team. That's why, quite frankly, I would almost rather see Indiana playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, because that's another team who functions very well at a very high level as a team.
And there seems to be an undercurrent of respect for Rick Carlisle as one of those guys that when you talk to media people, they go, "Oh yeah, that guy's a great coach." Nobody ever talks about him. He also would be great in one of those commercials like Seal did, where they put his head on an actual seal. I mean, doesn't it look like his head is coming out of a turtle shell?
I'm not buying into that.
You go to the zoo, like you were at the Miami Zoo when it first, I guess it came around the time you were here with the Miami Heat. And you see the Galapagos turtles were the first thing that you would see, these giant freaking turtles. That doesn't look like Carlisle could be one of them. I mean,
well, he's as wise as one of the old turtles. Let's say that. Let's give him credit for that. He's as wise as one of the old turtles. And I'll tell you one of the other things that a seldom known fact is that Rick Carlisle has his pilot's license. He can actually fly airplanes. So you talk about his cerebral acumen. It's very high. It's very high level.
Well, and this is interesting too, because if you look at how much do you buy into coaching matchup being a big differential? I mean, how much credit do you attach to the two coaches and what they might do in a given series? In this case, you're talking about Carlisle and Thibodeau. And we'll get to Thibodeau because my impression of him is he's the guy that just laid out $32 for a pastrami sandwich at Cass's Deli, and it only had one slice of pastrami, and it was on Wonder Bread. And you're like, he
looks like that though, doesn't
bitter. I mean, just bitter, like some bitter New Yorker that walks by some guy on a doorstep, sleeping, poor guy, a homeless guy, and he says, "Yeah, you deserve what you got." I mean, he just looks like one of those guys, and he plays his players. I don't know what's the word around the league about that. The whole Thibodeau playing his starters 47 minutes a game and never going to the bench, which he had to because of foul difficulty, and it actually paid some dividends in Game 3. But what's your feeling about the matchup and your impressions of Thibodeau, Grandma?
You know what? I like Thibodeau. He's a hard guy, cut from the old school cloth, wants to practice, wants to get into the gym, wants to work on things, continue to develop and grow with each practice. So I like that. He is an old school coach, finding himself in a new school NBA. But he's got some results from it. His team is right there in the Eastern Conference Finals, so you can't say much negatively about the way he coaches. You think I mentioned the old style. You ask any player from the 90s era, 80s era, if they ever wanted to come out of the game, and they would tell you absolutely not. So now we're in an age where 32 minutes from a player, that's too much. We need rest. You ask. I played 40 minutes a night some nights, and it didn't bother me at all. I wanted to play 45 minutes. So, that's the difference between what they have found through sports science and so forth, that you get better results from your players if you play them limited minutes. And I think that's where we are in the NBA right now. But you ask a player, he wants to play, he wants to be on the floor at all times. So I don't find any fault rather in Tom Thibodeau playing his starters a lot of minutes. I'm sure they have the policy of, hey, if you're tired, put your hand up, I'll get you out and get you right back in. And that's a good thing to have if you trust your players and they trust you.
And you could, I guess, just post a picture of LeBron in the locker room. If players started to complain about playing too many minutes, here's a guy playing 30-plus minutes a game at 40 years old.
Right.
And he manages to deal with it. And rarely has he missed any game or any games or time because of injury. So, it's an interesting dynamic there. And now, do you attach a lot of importance? People in the media love to say, "Oh yeah, well, so and so got smoked. He got out coached badly." There were some assertions that maybe in that game when the Knicks made the comeback in Game 3 that Carlisle fell asleep. He had Burton on the
Wheel,
bench.
huh?
Yeah, I don't know. What did you make of that? Are we just looking to attach some kind of quantifying reason why a team won or lost? By pointing to the coaches, or do you see them, Grant Long, making a specific difference in a lot of contests?
I think they do make a difference in the aspect of, it may come down to with 7 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, and one coach may not have any timeouts. He's burned through his timeouts. That's not good coaching. You want to have, every coach knows that you want to have timeouts at the end of the game, especially if in a tight game and you need to call a timeout to get a play, you need a timeout to get a player in, whatever the case may be. So coaches want to keep at least 2 of those timeouts in their hip pocket at the end of a game. That's a coaching mistake. That's not necessarily someone out coaching you. That's just a coaching mistake on that particular coach's part. But as far as the X's and O's, I don't think anybody out coaches each other when it comes to X's and O's. I think that's a lot on the players, because in today's NBA and even years gone by, as a player, you have all the information that you need. Now it's incumbent upon you to actually go out there and use that information that's been given to you. Even on the bench nowadays, Defoe, you got iPads and so forth, where they're actually in real time going over some of the plays of the opponent. So
They
there's
have
really
30
no
coaches
excuse.
too. There's like
Right.
30 guys back there.
Exactly. You got about 30
Freaking
guys back
souls in
there.
the upper deck, and he's giving advice.
It's almost like football. You got a guy
Yeah.
up in the hockey seats, peering down on the court saying, hey, they're running this play, and they're signaling it down. Somebody's on the phone calling somebody on that bench. So they've got all the technology to give you all the information and plays that you need for the players to go out and execute. So a lot of that does not fall on the coach when you see a team falter. Like I said, unless it comes down to those final seconds, final minutes where a coach doesn't have a timeout or just makes a bonehead play by not getting one of the key players in when he should have. That's a coaching mishap right there. But for the most part, I don't think the coaches have the ability to win and lose games. It really is on the players.
I was thinking some of those 40-minute games had to be when Ron Rothstein looked down the bench and he saw that the only guy they could put in your place to get you a blow, so to speak, was Jim Rowinski.
Hey, Jim was ready to go. He was ready to
Everybody
get
wants to
somebody.
play. Yeah, who wants to sit on a bench and sulk? I mean, you want to get out there and play. All right, let's look at this aspect of things. And you're in the media now and have been for some time there with the Pistons and broadcasting. You understand what it means to have some kind of marquee matchup that you can provide for the fans. Well, will this be if it's Indiana and Oklahoma City? Will the people start looking up, calling the Guinness people and saying this is the lowest rated final that we've ever seen? Because now you've been to these places. There is no reason to go to Indianapolis and or Oklahoma City. Is that a fair statement? Unless you're getting paid handsomely by the basketball team there. And, for $50 million, I could put up with the fact that White Castle is the second biggest restaurant in Indianapolis. And that the only attraction is that stupid backboard that Larry Bird was shooting that he had on his barn door. And, that's like the statue in the center of the city. There's nothing to do there. And I would imagine, I don't know, do they have enough star power on these two teams with the SGA, the MVP,
Yep.
And Halliburton, an emerging, I don't fully understand his game. I'm going to ask you to explain it also to me because what the hell is that jump shot that he shoots? That's like an old school set shot, isn't it?
You know how many people are coaches that probably tried to change that shot?
What is that?
Yeah, you go back. It's not one that you would teach up and coming players. That's
No,
for sure.
Ray Allen. Yeah.
He's made it work for him. But
Yeah.
you talk. It may be Defoe the first time that we've had. I'm trying to think. Recently, is this the first time that we've had two very small market teams? In the NBA Finals, if it
Oh,
comes down to that.
yeah.
Indiana's been there before, I believe, but this is the first time it may be that we've had two small market teams in the NBA Finals. And
And
for
again,
the
Reggie Miller, then, which I don't know. I mean, he was an attraction, no doubt.
right, but they did have the star power of
Yeah.
Reggie Miller.
So, yeah, it'd be interesting. So, do you really believe this? This was my question. Do you believe that the network television executives and all ad salespeople on Madison Avenue will be, loaded up with a cyanide cap, thinking, there's no chance that the Knicks come back in the series, but they desperately need them in the finals. So, what do you think? Will this game come under suspicion because Tim Donaghy is trying to officiate? Adam
He
Silver
called
has
him
his
out of
arm around
retirement.
Spike Lee as they're sitting courtside there going, "Don't worry about a thing, man. They're coming back."
Yeah, it's Tim Donaghy that's in
Yeah.
Secaucus on the referee on the challenge calls.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
goes automatically
He
the
said,
other
yeah,
way.
they go to the booth. Oh, no, man, that's clearly off him, yeah. What do you think? I mean, is it necessary to preserve any kind of really intense interest in the NBA Finals for the Knicks to be a part of it?
Let's face it. You know what? The NBA would have much rather have LeBron James and the Lakers in the finals.
Yes.
That would have been, the oldest guy playing. It's LeBron James, the best guy in the league. He's playing in the finals as a 40-year-old. You can't make up that narrative. The NBA would have loved to ride that story out as long as they could. Oh, if you could. So if you can't get the Lakers in, why not have New York in the finals, the biggest the media capital of the world, and all of
Sure.
those things? It's not necessarily the team, but it's New York. You got New York in the finals, and you know how many people come out when it's the Knicks, the superstars, and all of these people, the musicians. Everybody comes out, and they're a New York. All of a sudden, a New York Knicks fan. That's great for the NBA. Who's going to come out for the Pacers? What star do they have? What's going to happen? They're going to roll out an Indianapolis 500 car and sit in the court. What's going to happen in Oklahoma City? What's the star power there that makes you say we're going there and it's this, it's this, it's this? It's really going to be. I feel like the wheels are turning when it comes to the NBA and the advertisement of this finals, because now it's going to be a complete shift of the individual marketing of players. Now it's going to be this team and that team, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Both teams are very, very high level functioning teams. It's not the individual stars, although you have an MVP and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. The NBA and all of the advertisement will definitely push the team aspect and how well, what the rewards are for playing as a team. You get to the NBA Finals. These are two teams at the pinnacle of that.
The Ant-Man gets far more attention than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. In fact, I was thinking as you were speaking about these guys and the marketing aspect of it, what is it that SGA and Holmgren, what are they advertising? I don't even know what the sponsor is. They're featured in like a series of commercials, and I couldn't tell you what they're for. But and look, great player, and one of the things, I don't know, is this corny to even bring up? But it seems like that there's an eternal team chemistry there that is genuine.
Yeah.
Or am I dreaming that? Because I fell for this. We were talking about this before the NCAA tournament when you were on with us, Grant, and
Mhm.
we're talking about. I watched the celebrations after victories by Tennessee and Bruce Pearl, and I thought, my God, these guys love this cat, and they would do anything for him. They would.
Right.
I mean, literally. I mean, they are going to bust every fiber in their body that they can to dedicate to winning, and then they got knocked out in an early round. So I don't know, but when you watch the post game celebrations of the Oklahoma City Thunder, it does seem like that there's some kind of team chemistry there that is not the same as you might see on other teams, that they really genuinely love what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know what? You've got a star on that team, like you mentioned already, SGA, the MVP.
Yeah.
He's the guy that galvanizes them all, because when you have your best player who says, hey, we're a team, we function as a team. It's not about me. I won an NBA or the MVP, and you talked. I don't know if you heard about it, but he bought all the players, Rolex watches and gifts and all of these types of things. That's big. That tells you, he's telling the world, the basketball community, that I don't do this by myself. I had a team behind me that helped me achieve this goal. So that's putting everything on the forefront. I also have to mention that this has been the Oklahoma City Thunder culture for as long as they've been in Oklahoma City, and under the watchful eye, mind you, of Sam Presti. He's done a phenomenal job at getting the right type of players that will subscribe to a team aspect. Even when this team got going early in 08, 09, Kevin Durant and Westbrook and those guys, they still function or try to function as a team. And I think it just, what we see now is the maturation of Sam Presti's vision. Even when he first started in that role as general manager of the team, you're seeing probably the best of his thought process and what he envisioned for the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're seeing the best of it right now when we talk about the team concept, the overall gravity of pulling everybody together and galvanizing one as a unit. You mentioned Chet Holmgren. He was out a lot of last year. They still managed to right the ship. Didn't get as far as they got this year, but they got him back this year. They added Hardenstein from New York, mind you. And they've just become a very, very good team. You already mentioned it, Defoe, how well they respond to one another, even in the post-game press conferences.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you're doing a walk-off interview and it's SGA being interviewed, there's 4 or 5 other of his teammates standing right there with him. That's genuine to me. I see that a lot with that team.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Yeah, it's interesting how they were put together, also, and I do want to get into what would be the general animosity that there probably is out there for the New York Knicks. But just one more thing on Oklahoma City, because the way this team came together, I mean, they went full circuit. They did probably more Michigan things than even the Detroit Pistons did in all of those years where you had to cover for the fact that they were only going to win 24 games.
Well,
And try
14.
to paint a happy face on that in their post game shows. But I mean, they make a trade. They dump Paul George, who's kind of been a wandering minstrel of sorts, but hasn't been this superstar player that he was certainly prior to his injury, and then even for a period of time after that. And they get SGA back in the deal and a bunch of draft picks. One, I guess, turned out to be Jalen Williams.
Yep.
And then on top of that, they were tanking for a couple of years. I mean, they've gone full circle in putting this together. So it's kind of nice. And they do have a parallel, I think, to Indiana in that they play a lot of guys that you never heard of, and they're all good. And they have my main guy there, I think, all NBA every year, Alex Caruso, as
I see you playing with the headband on just like him.
yeah, that's like the old. He's like the white slick Watts, I guess. But I always liked that look. I mean, I didn't want to particularly be a ball guy, but I always liked that look with the headband. Which
Incidentally, that was a pretty good pickup for Oklahoma to grab him. And you
yes,
also you mentioned Paul George. Paul George has the distinction of being the guy who brought SGA to Oklahoma, but also being part of the trade deal that brought Tyrese Halliburton to Indiana from Sacramento.
wow,
So he's helped both of these teams
many a
get to the
GM
finals indirectly.
yeah, many GM should have lost their job for acquiring
Right.
Paul George.
I got one for you, Default.
Yeah,
Listen to this. The Oklahoma City Thunder, and we talked about Sam Presti a little bit earlier and how he's had a very good eye for talent.
yes,
He's had 4 MVPs that he's brought to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Kevin Durant, now SGA, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden were all at one point part of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're 4 MVPs of the leagues. So he's got a pretty good eye for talent when you can say that 4 of the guys that I selected have been the MVP of the NBA.
in my many times and too many to document of being dead wrong about something that I was commenting on in sports. When Oklahoma City had Durant, Westbrook, and Harden, and I had watched some of their games at the end of the regular season, I thought, wow, this James Harden is great. He was coming off the bench. I think he was their 6th man at the time.
Yeah, you're right.
Become the superstar. And I declared very boldly before the Heat challenged them in that postseason championship round, that Harden would be the key to the series. Little did I know, though, that he would be the key because he was so terrible.
Yes, he
He did
was.
one of his vanishing acts that you couldn't have picked a worse guy to center on. But yeah, I mean, look, they've had great players there, and they've also, this Presti guy has really put together a team that complements. I mean, this skinny waif like. How I mean, Chet Holmgren, you could never, Grant Long, in your career, even at your age now, allow him to get a rebound over you, could he? I mean, could you? I
Well,
mean,
if he gets close enough to the basket, you got to figure the guy's over 7 feet tall. If he
yeah,
just extends his arms and he's in the right place at the right time, he's going to inhale a couple of those rebounds. There's nothing you can do about it.
you would have knocked him into the third row. Are you kidding me? I mean,
And it just goes to show you again how basketball has changed, because
yeah,
his being 7 feet really has no bearing when he gets close to the basket, because he doesn't get close to the basket.
no.
He's more on the perimeter.
I'll say this: he moves very well for a guy that weighs $147. He looks like the towering inferno. That guy Sebastian Fundora, the boxer. I was talking about. All right, now I don't know how intense did there when you were with the Miami Heat or any other team that you played for in your 15-year career. Animosity towards the New York Knicks, because we're talking about how valuable they would be if they made it into the finals from a financial standpoint, a viewership standpoint. But I mean, I grew up, and maybe you can excuse me for this because I grew up a Knick fan, right? And they were terrible. It was hard to root for Bells Bellamy and Butch Comives chucking from the outside, 32%. This was the hottest sharpshooter in college when he was with Bowling Green, and they were like NBA bag ladies. It seemed. I guess they still had. They had the great Dick Barnett, who checked out earlier this year, was part of that team. So they make the trade and they acquire some players, and they end up trading Bellamy and Comize for Dave DeBusschere, and that solidifies everything they're doing. But so I grew up kind of liking the franchise, and yet that changed when they took on the Miami Heat. Were you involved in any of those bloodbaths of the series in the postseason with the Knicks, or was that after you left the team?
That was after I left, and I never knew why that was such a, how that even caught fire to be a rivalry. I never knew or understood how come the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks just all of a sudden, when those two got together, combustion. It was just going, that kettle was going to boil over every time. And it was good for basketball. Jeff Van Gundy, dragging around on the floor right there, grabbing somebody's ankles. It was very competitive. It was good for basketball. Great, both great teams, and maybe it had something to do with maybe the physical play of the way the New York Knicks came in, and they were really hands-on and grabby and pushy and all of those kinds of things. And you got a big guy in Alonzo Mourning who seemed to be affected by all of that physical play. And once he let on that, it did bother him from time to time, the Knicks were just going to push that button, that hot button, every single time. And like I said, I thought it was good for basketball.
Yeah. So you don't harbor any deep rooted Nick resentment. I mean, even now with and look, that series was not exactly. I played. I don't want to imply that it wasn't on the level, but it did seem like there was some favoritism there. That seems like centuries ago that the Knicks and the Pistons did battle in the opening round, and that was an excellent series.
It was, and everybody on this end of the spectrum, Detroit end of the spectrum, will agree with me and say the Pistons should have advanced to the second round. Obviously, they didn't, and it was one of those things that happened throughout the playoffs. And a team would be up 17, 18 points, and you're thinking, okay, they're going to stroll to the victory line. And all of a sudden you turn the TV off and turn it back on an hour later, and that team that was up 17 somehow lost the game. That was
Yes,
the Pistons. That
with
was
the
the
parade
Pistons.
to the stripe. Yes, yeah, that was unbelievable. But yeah, so I thought maybe there was a little bit of Nick, resentment and/or that you wouldn't be the biggest fan of the New York Knicks. All right, I want to make an introduction here, and I guess you said, Grant Long, that and one final thing too on basketball before we do this. So, do you see Oklahoma City prevailing over either Eastern Conference team?
Wow.
You're not ready to throw in a towel on neither of those clubs. All right, I like that.
Nah, it would be a. I'm leaning towards you on this one, Default.
Yeah.
If the Knicks come back and win this series, listen, bring out the conspiracy theorists on this one right here. There's no way that the Knicks should have the ability to come back and win this series. It's just no way. And I know, and I say that knowing that Indiana has probably won 3 or 4 games with a happenstance shot. The ball bounces up over the rim and falls in. Just crazy type of stuff that allowed the Pacers to win. They've had 3 or 4 games like that.
Yeah. It looked like a Ronnie Cycli brick from the top of the key. I mean, it really did. Going back to your days with the Heat. I want to make an introduction here as we have our next guest on Conversations today ready to go. And this is really, I couldn't be any more appropriate. But you say, Grant Long, that you did not cross paths with Scott Mellanby. You were a member of the expansion Heat, and we introduced the great Scott Mellanby to the program here, who, of course, was a foundational piece of Panther franchise history in many, many ways. So welcome to the show, Scott. First of all, you and Grant didn't cross paths when you were here in Miami?
I don't think so. It's hard to remember. It's been a long time. It's a lifetime ago, isn't it, Grant?
It is definitely a lifetime ago. But what I do remember is how excited everybody was when Miami, South Florida got a hockey team. And my thing was, everybody's excited about playing hockey in one of the hottest places in the United States, and we're excited about people skating around on ice that's going to melt. But it was really nice. The place, much like it was when the Miami Heat was announced that they were coming to South Florida. Very, very, very excited about having a professional team in the region.
Well, when I started my career in '86, I certainly never thought I was going to be playing in the state of Florida. It was
right,
but expansion happened, and thanks to the Wayne and Marty Huizenga were great owners, and we went into the building there as secondary tenants to you guys. And they threw a drywall locker room up for us. It wasn't much to it, but great memories. I mean, like I said, and it's so good to see now how it's grown. I remember being in a van with Brian Screwlin and John Van Beesbrook in August before we started, going to malls to speak to an open mic type thing so people could ask questions. And you'd go in and there'd be 30 chairs in front of you. There'd be 6 people sitting them asking these questions. And I'm not kidding, like 6, 7 people going, who are these guys?
Wow.
So to see, and I was there for 8 years. So you started to see the young, we had good teams early and some success. So it kind of, the grassroots, it literally was grassroots. I mean, there was not many people playing hockey down there at that time. And so it's neat to see now. I see these kids on the glass, banging the glass, watching the game the other night in South Florida. Obviously last night was in Carolina, and I think, geez, that person was not alive when I was playing down there.
Exactly.
But they got rats and they're throwing them on the ice. And it's pretty cool to feel as players that really helped start hockey in South Florida, to see how it's grown.
So what are they throwing on the ice nowadays?
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. So I killed a rat in '96, the year we went to the finals. At the start of that year, I killed a rat in our drywall dressing room. I don't think your owner was too great to our owner with what he gave us for space in that building. So, but maybe we have him to thank, because it brought the rats around, I guess. But
is that how that whole thing started?
Yeah. So we were in the dressing room getting ready to go out for our home opener. And one of our trainers yelled, there's a rat. It came scurrying into our locker room, and there's only one door in and out. It was dry, literally drywalled up. But you probably walked by there, the Panthers den, they called it. And it kind of ran around and this and that, and then it kind of beelined right at me, and I hammered the thing with a slap shot, because I was standing up with my stick in my hand. I hammered it against the wall, and it was killed. And then I scored 2 goals that game. It was our home opener, and John Van Beesbrook actually is the one that's coined the phrase rat trick. He said, Mellanby got a rat trick, and that's how it got out in the media. The media said, well, what do you mean? He killed a rat and got 2 goals, so I'm calling it a rat trick. That's what Beezer said. And then as the year went along and our team was really rolling, and we were in first place at the Christmas, and our coach coached in the All-Star game, and that was one All-Star game I played in. I wasn't as good a player as you were, but
well, I didn't get to the All-Star game, so you got that one.
You should have been, but
Thanks.
yeah, and that's kind of how it started. That the people started throwing the rats on the ice, and as we went on a run to the finals, it just became like it was incredible. They
That's
hired
awesome.
they hired the Orkin people who are extinguishers, as you know. Would as soon as we'd score a goal, the Zamboni gates would open and these 10 Orkin people would come out and start picking up hundreds of rats would be thrown, and it caused all kinds of delays. The league actually put in place a rule after that run that you couldn't
Now
throw things
I'm
away.
ignorant to this. They
So
weren't
now,
real rats, were they?
no real rats,
Okay.
no real rats.
Rubber rats.
But but
I was
so but so over time, people have continued after the game. So if you ever see on TV after the game, that's when you'll start to see these black objects on the ice, and they're rats, and people are going to games. And I should have patented the damn thing. I mean, the franchise
yeah.
is still making money, and all they've done is thank me. They haven't given me any money for it.
I
Yeah.
thought you maybe were getting a residual from the dollar store because I remember
Oh
Right,
man,
right.
going there before those series in the 95, 96 playoffs when the tradition really took a stronghold here in South Florida. And you'd be online in the dollar store, and all anybody was buying were rubber rats, and
yeah.
we're all going to the game. Grant, hey, thanks so much for joining us here on the program. We're going to let you go. And
Hey, Defo, can you give me your time for one question?
yeah,
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
from a guy that doesn't know a whole lot about hockey, tell me what was special about Van Beesbrook. Because I heard his name a lot. I know he was, but as a guy
Yeah.
that played the sport, how was he special? What made him special?
Well, Johnny's not a real big guy, and nowadays, all the goalies like I work for the St. Louis Blues now, and generally you got to be 6'3" just to get drafted. But
Wow.
Beezer was a great combination of athleticism, and also his mental toughness. To me, is what made him such a good goalie. His focus before you didn't talk to him before games.
Really?
He had this breathing thing going on. He was breathing through his eyes, like they used to say in Bull Durham there. But his focus and intensity on game day, really every day. He was a great pro that way. I would say, listen, what it's like. Talent is one thing, will is another thing, and when you
Yep,
have
yep.
both, and when you have both, you have a chance to be, you have a chance to be the best version of yourself. And Beezer was a very talented player, very talented goalie, but his mental strength and focus, I think, was a huge factor in his success.
Got it.
yeah. But you could have taken him to the whole one-on-one, Grant, and
Okay,
he
okay.
would have been on
Yeah,
you every time.
no contest there. No
Maybe
contest.
we play basketball on ice and we see what happens.
It would be tough on skates, I would think. Grant, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It was great analysis, and I'm glad you don't, have any kind of negative feeling towards me because at one time I was a Knick fan. So,
I can't hold that against you.
but you was robbed, as they say in boxing. You was robbed with that Detroit series. That was bordering on disgrace. We'll see if it happens again with Indiana. Thanks, Grant. Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
Take
All
care,
right.
Grant.
Grant Long with us here on the show. All right, we make the introduction official here. Scott Mellanby joining us on the program, an original member of the Florida Panthers, part of what you would have to say is a gritty crew of grinders. Is that a fair way to assess what you guys were with Screwy and Stu Barnes and
Yeah.
the whole crew there?
Well, Grant touched on it. I mean, our best player was our goalie, and we knew that. Back in those days, the protection rules for expansion teams, they've changed those for the good. With teams like Vegas and Seattle coming in, it's a bit easier to get. There's a little bit more talent available. I think when I was picked by the Panthers, Anaheim was also picking, and I think out of the two teams, I was the only player selected that had scored 20 goals in the league. So there's no question we were kind of a lunch pail group with a good goalie and a bunch of players that knew they needed to play a team game to stay in the league. I mean, when you got picked up in expansion back then, excuse me, I mean, you had teams, Ottawa, San Jose, I mean, you name it, that it was a nightmare. Like it was almost like, okay, I'm going to be out of the league soon. So we were a team that really knew we had to, we had a lot of character and a lot of grit. And, the rules were a bit different back then. There was a little more hooking and holding and tackling, if you will.
And the
And
center ice trap, I guess, was the big thing back then.
yeah, Roger Nielsen. But the one thing I'll say about our teams, and, everyone calls it people will say, well, they had a miracle run to the finals in 96. I mean, I understand that, but I'll tell you what, we were in first place at Christmas that year, and we were in first place in the Eastern Conference the next year. And Doug McLean coached 2 All-Star games in a row. So, yeah, it was a miracle that a group of that low, I don't want to say low level of talent, but that group could, have a couple of years of success like we did. But it was, we were a team that believed that we were good. We believed we could win. And I'll tell you one thing we knew back then with the trap, like you talked about, we had a 1-goal lead in the third period. It was over.
Yeah.
But the
The red line may as well have been a brick wall after that.
yeah, and we just, and it was, look, the game's better now. The way it's played, it's more exciting. I'm certainly not going to promote the trapping and sitting back and doing the things we did, but we did what we had to do to win, and we're in the winning business, and the rules were the way they were, and we did what we could do to win.
It was hockey's version of the four corners, which made Dean Smith
That's right.
famous. You're thinking, wait, you've got every all-star. This is a tactic that should only be employed by a team that, as you said, I mean, the league wasn't as kind to expansion teams as they later became when the Las Vegas
Yeah.
Golden Knights assembled a championship caliber club almost out of the chute, which seemed
Yeah.
impossible.
Well, and you think about it, the league has done a great job with that. Look, if someone's going to pay the fee they have to pay now to get in the
Yeah.
league, they want to have a chance to at least be. I mean, look, Vegas, that was a bit of probably a one-off, but Seattle's a pretty competitive team, and the league had to make sure and they did a great job of it.
All right, so you come from Edmonton, and you had been to a Stanley Cup final there. I believe it was a 7-game series loss to the Red Wings.
I was with Philly. I lost my first year. We lost in Game 7 to the Oilers, the Gretzky and Company.
Oh, okay, all right. So when you're selected in the expansion draft, then you were actually thinking, okay, this is a possible extension for my career, or that it really was almost like a death sentence for.
Yeah, I think different players are in different places in their career. I had scored 20 goals 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 times already, and I was only 27.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't really expecting it. But Glenn Sather, who was the GM at Edmonton at the time, the team, I was there 2 years. We went to the semifinals my first year and then missed the playoffs the next year. And he said to me, he said, Scott, with the money that, and I think I was making $350,000 at the time, he said, we're the dynasty here is over. And he said, if I can pay someone, half of what I have to pay you to score 15 goals, why would I pay you double to score 20? So I'm going to leave you unprotected, and you're probably going to get picked because I was a good player. I mean, I wasn't at the end of my career, but
By no means.
yeah, I was taken aback a little bit, but it ended up being the best thing that could ever happen to me.
No, it turned out great. All right, the origins of the franchise, and we'll get to this year's team and the chances of repeating, and the phenomenon of going to 3 straight Stanley Cups. Look, as Grant Long was talking about, the only thing people considered when it came to ice was at the bottom of a martini glass in Miami. Nobody knew for sure that they had, I believe, an exhibition game involving the great Gretzky, and that people were turned on by the idea, but nobody knew that was going to work, and it helped that you guys were good right away. But you had Bill Torrey, you had Bobby Clark. I remember going to some of these press conferences and thinking, this is some serious royalty, and Roger Nielsen was a highly regarded coach. So, how much did having that level of hockey experience and knowledge and success, how much did that influence the early success of the team, in your opinion?
Well, I think it influenced a lot. I think not so much. I mean, certainly stability after the team was picked, but I think just I think their knowledge and ability to actually pick the players they did with a vision of what those players would be willing to do, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think they picked veteran players that they knew, were good teammates, had character, would buy in, would pull on the rope the right way. I think that knowledge that they had was and Roger was the right coach for the team. He was a defensive specialist. And so I think that their knowledge. And I'll tell you one thing: when we broke camp, Bob Clark was such a competitor. People, might not remember him as a player, but he was one of the fiercest competitors ever. And I remember we broke training camp, and the last thing he said when we came out of training camp, we had our team, we were ready to go. He looked around the room and he said, "We're not going to be a doormat to any effing team in this league." And I can probably swear on here, but I won't. And he walked out, and I think the tone was kind of set that, like, hey, like, their expectation is for us to, we're not rolling over, and we're expected to play. So we had a great group, and we had a lot of leadership. Probably had 7 or 8 9 guys that could have been the captain of the team. We had that much experience and character.
All right, and now when you look at this year's team and the last couple of years, there's look, you had Dale Talon, what was considered hockey royalty, while he may have done some good things. It seemed like that there was this long period of time where, honestly, Scott, it was a shame because we got so attached to the team when you guys were playing there in the mid '90s and early '90s, and then there was like a 20-year blackout period where you know how South Florida can be too. I mean, this is a city of indifference. If you're not winning championships, it's not like you're going to have Cubs or Red Sox type of loyalty here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, things that really looked like they'd gone south. And then this Bill Zito comes in. Now you're in management and working with the St. Louis Blues. How would you characterize what this guy has been able to do? Where he pulls the trigger on the Kachuk deal. Jonathan Huberdeau was an excellent player, but wasn't this aggressive type that he thought was going to sort of ignite a new spark with the team, if you will. And then after that, these additions that he keeps making, he's signing guys off waivers and making last minute trade deadline deals for guys like Marchand. How would you characterize what this guy has been doing, and how is it looked upon around the league?
Yeah, well, I'll deal with that a couple of ways. First of all, you're right with the 20-year blackout. Like, for those of us that were there, like I said, riding around in vans and trying to grow hockey in South Florida, I was fortunate to score the first goal in Panthers history, as well as the rat thing and be a captain there and those types. So for a lot of us that had been involved in that, it was really disappointing to see the team struggle for so long. After Mr. Huizenga sold a good chunk of the team, there was a lack of leadership, I think, throughout with turning over managers, etc. For those of us, like, I want the Florida Panthers to be there forever because I'm a part of their history. Small part, but it matters to me, and helping grow hockey in that community matters to me. So it's great to see them where they're at now. As far as Bill Zito goes, obviously, like, look, you got to look at what they've done there, his staff. We talk about drafting all the time. It's because it is. It's hard to get to build your team, but the amount of acquisitions that they've made, and you go through their lineup, Verhage, Reinhardt, Kachuk, Bennett. Um,
Kind of getting some mutilated sound here. Unfortunately, I don't know if internet connection or whatever, but yeah, we lost you there for a little bit, Scott. Now we lost you altogether. Well, sound wise, yeah, we can still see you. So I don't know. Did you hit a mute button or something on the? Scott Mellanby, our special guest here on the program, and he's rolling. And then we ran into a little technical snafu here. Okay, yeah, sign back in, and then we'll see if we can't pick up the conversation here. As Scott Mellanby was, I mean, could the guy be any more wildly entertaining? All right, we have you back, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Anyways, I was just talking about the way they built that team there. It's drafting is usually your fabric, and certainly they have players there that were drafted there with Barkov and Ekblad and Lundell. But to build a team through trades like that is difficult. And you look at Kachuk and Bennett and Verhage and now Jones and Marchand, and it's very impressive what they've done. I don't think anybody around the league would say anything different than that. Zito's done a great job there. The Violas obviously have provided steady leadership, the coaching staff. And then at the end of the day, to do what they're doing there, to keep going back to these cup finals the way they have in today's game with the parity and everything else, it says a heck of a lot about that group in the dressing room and their character and their belief and their the leadership that they have. It's I don't care how good you are, to get back 3 years in a row is very difficult to do, and they've done it.
Yeah, I imagine 3 straight Stanley Cup. I still remember it's going to be a long, lingering, and indelible impression. That whole series and the run to the Colorado Avalanche when you were there in '95 and '96. I've never been Scott, and you've been involved. I'm sure. I mean, you've done a zillion interviews and been involved in various media things, and always were extremely amenable and accommodating. But back in the days when you were a player, but
Thank you.
I have never been more dead wrong about a guy than I was about Paul Maurice when he was hired. It just seemed like, okay, he's got the most losses of any coach in NHL history. Yes, I know he has a lot of wins. I mean, he's the second coming of Scotty Bowman, but I mean, struck me. I don't know if you remember the Dolphin football coach, Joe Philbin, who seemed to be on a personality level with like Scotty Scheffler, the golfer, where you're wondering, okay, is there a guy actually ticking inside there? We knew nothing about Paul Maurice when he took over. He has won me over like no other person ever. I've never been more dead wrong in thinking that this guy was a stiff. What do you know of him, and how would you characterize what he's done as a coach? And then I guess part B of that would be how much difference does a coach make with an organization?
Well, yeah, he's done a great job. Paul's, I do know him a little bit. I don't know him well. I've never worked with him. He's certainly a guy that has a great reputation as a human being. I think that shows through in his interviews how much he, cares about his players. I think, he's coached for a long time where you've had to, gone from 20, I think it's been 27 or 28 years, and the evolution of the game has changed. The evolution of the player has changed. The evolution of how you have to deal with situations has changed. And he just seems to have a great demeanor and personality for um, that aspect of it now, where it's like I said, it's you really need to be a great communicator. Players want to know where they stand, and so yeah, I mean, look at it's great to see. I mean, I've been in 3 finals myself, 2 as a player and 1 in management, and several other conference finals, and I haven't won yet a Stanley Cup, and that hurts. It's when you're in the game for as long as I have been, you want to get to the top of the mountain, but sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and I think he'd be the first one to tell you that, he's in a great situation and he's a part of it. And I think a coach makes a huge difference, but so does everybody. His assistant coaches do, management does, the players in the room. Like I said, I can't say enough about. I mean, they're this team down 2-0 to Toronto in overtime in game 3. Like, and then they come back and they win that. Then they win 3 in a row and they lose on home and game. And then they go back to Toronto and win. I mean, having been in the room through long playoff runs and getting close and stuff like that, that's a mental makeup and a character thing that they've got it in spades there. So, but I think for those of us and people that are around the game a long time, he's always been a good coach that's put in the work, and it's nice to see people like that get rewarded and have their day, and it gives me hope that my day is still coming.
On some days, he sounds as righteous as anybody that be standing up in front of a congregation, and on other days, he sounds like
Well,
Joe Pesci. I mean, he's
yeah,
just
listen, he's been a
a
coach.
combination of things.
He's been a coach for life,
Yeah,
and so all the lessons along the way, and all the ups and downs, and all the heartaches and stuff, and all the watching people carry the cup around the ice. Like, he finally had his day, and so a lot of the things that you hear him talk about are just he has so much experience that at times he's I don't know if pontificate's the right word, but he's verbalizing. It's like reading a book. It's like,
yeah,
and that's what I enjoy about when you get interviews with him. It's like, okay, here's a part of a chapter of a book. You know what I mean?
yes.
Because he's been around that long. So he's got like I said, a great reputation as a human being, and I'm sure the players love playing for him.
All right, a couple of short takes here, and then we want to talk about some of your charitable efforts, which have been noble and you've been involved in very deeply and personally for a long, long time, helping create awareness and funds for autism and studying ways to help people deal with that from a lot of different angles. Best of the goalies that are left, you're lining up for the Blues You get to pick. You got Oettinger, Skinner, and Bobrovsky. Who's going to be in net for you?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean,
Maybe it's unfair because you may be talking to these guys in the
yeah,
future.
I got
But
I got to
yeah,
watch what I say. I don't want the league getting pissed off at me. But
yeah.
no,
But
listen, they're all really good goalies. Obviously, we talked about Beezer obviously
sure.
before. I'd say Bobrovsky's closer to Beezer than anybody else because he's not the biggest goalie in the league. He's a great blend of athleticism and talent. And from what I have gathered from what people have said about him, just a great pro. And that's again what Beezer was that day-to-day belief and mental strength, which he seems to have. So I mean, look, I'm not going to bet against the champ so I'll say him just because uh, he's got the title right now, and someone's got to knock him out.
Barkov, as you look at this player, how would you characterize him? Because I mean, he makes this beautiful pass last night for the
Yeah,
game-deciding goal
yeah.
to
Well,
Verhaeghe, and he always seems to be in the middle of it, and yet he'll play the D also.
no, he's just a phenomenal. We use the term 200-foot player all the time, and more so nowadays than ever, you need your best players to play both ends of the rink, right? It's you've seen it with this Panther team, their ability to check and close out games. You see it, at Edmonton and Dallas right now. Edmonton's been really good defensively and taking the slot away, and he's just a phenomenal player. Like last night's goal, Verhaeghe goal was just an example of. I mean, what do you want in a player? Size, power, skill, vision. I mean, and that was an offense, and then the touch and creativity and vision to make that play happen was phenomenal. It was a play that'll be remembered for a long time, and great finish by Verhaeghe. And then that's the offense. But what this guy does defensively is all world at 6'3", 6'4", whatever he does. He's always on the right side of the puck. He checks. And seems like a great humble. It's funny. It's a nice mix they have there right now. They've got, speaking of rats, they've got some of the best rats in the league with Marchand and Kachuk and Bennett, and all great players. And he seems like the steady Eddie that just every day, is calm and cool and collected, and phenomenal player.
All right, Scott, you've worked long and hard to do very very favorable things with regards to autism. Tell us what you have going, and of course, what we know from a personal standpoint, why you got involved in the
Yeah.
cause.
Well, yeah. When I was in Florida, I have three kids. I had three kids while I was playing for the Panthers, and our middle son. I have a daughter and two boys, but our middle son Carter is 29 now, and is pretty much nonverbal autistic adult now, and you said about finding ways to make it work, and we're still trying to find ways. It's a grind. It's been a battle. Been involved in a number. We had our Mellanby Autism Foundation for many years. Had some tournaments in Florida. Continued that on for probably about a decade, and then have kind of went away from that. I just felt like I was getting pulled in a lot of directions, and I was still trying to finish my career out. But I get involved with. Uh, Different autism charities locally for the most part, and trying to help out how I can. And like I said, we're still fighting the fight. Like it's never over. It's never over. I think of the line in Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite movies, where the guy Andy Dufresne says, "I got caught in the eye of the storm. I just didn't think the storm was going to last this long." And that's the way I feel. It's a battle, it's a grind, it's hard, and we're now, for us, it's next steps as to where Carter's going to live eventually. It's not like we have 10 choices. He needs full time help, so we're still grinding it out. But appreciate you bringing it up. It's, I think, the awareness part of it, and people, you know, seeing someone like myself who played hockey, like, we show up on TV and make lots of money and go away, and you don't realize sometimes that athletes are people. We have
Yes.
children with disabilities. We have parents that die young. We have, things that happen. All these guys that are playing now, they at different times. We just saw it with Winnipeg, with Mark Scheifele losing his father the night before Game 6. So, we're human and we're doing the best we can. And like I said, I'm a little bit less active now than I was, just because at times you get kind of, you pass the baton to other people to try to help you fight the fight instead of trying to do it all yourself. But it's, the support's been great. And from when my son was diagnosed in 1998 to now, the knowledge and the acceptance and people understanding a bit of what it is, it's at a way different level now, obviously, than it's ever been. So, it's something, I don't know if there'll ever be a cure for it. It is a neurological thing with, I believe, a genetic component. And um, it's like other disabilities that with the brain, it's I don't know that the answer will ever be there. So we just try to support each other, and we've had great friends over the years that have helped us along the way, and do the best we can.
Great stuff, and great stuff all the way through. Scott Mellanby, the original goal scored by Scott Mellanby for the expansion at the Florida Panthers, and then of course the whole rat tradition, right up there with the terrible towel or any tradition in sports.
Yeah, I got
Tossing
I got
rats. If you had just gotten 1 cent off of every rat that was sold at the dollar store,
it.
that 1 year alone.
I keep waiting for the Panthers to call and tell me my check's on the way. But
Yeah,
I do have to tell you one story, because we
yeah,
talked about kids and having my kids and raising your kids. And when you have kids, you look back and at certain things that happened when they were young, and those connections you make, whether it was camping trips or, whatever it was for people. I had a guy it was one of the most, I got emotional, to be honest with you, because you don't realize when you're in your journey as an athlete, how you affect people. And I had this guy come up to me. I had just started having my family when all that stuff happened in '96, but he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I want to thank you for the memories you helped me create with my kids back in '96." And I said to him, I said, "Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Did you used to go to the games? Or I guess you went to blah, blah, blah." And he said, "No," he said, we couldn't afford to go to the games. But we had 3 kids and we bought a whole bunch of rubber rats, plastic rats, and we sat and watched the games on TV, and we used to throw the rats at the TV. And I was just like blown away by that, thinking about
yeah,
this scene. They didn't have flat screen TVs and plasmas and all that quite yet, so you could do
sure.
that and get away with not breaking your TV. But just a neat kind of microcosm of what the whole, when you affect somebody's life like that. It was really a really neat story. And who knows, maybe that guy's kids are going to the games now with their kids, and throwing
Yeah.
rats, hopefully.
Well, if they go through the Panther shop there, which you can't avoid because that's the way you get into the arena, the rats are now $5 a pop. So, so if you're not getting a piece, Scott Mellanby,
I,
you may
I'm
want to
not.
call a local
Yeah,
attorney down here, a
yeah,
trademark attorney, because
yeah.
that would have been a good move. Hey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I remember you from back in the day, and well, we didn't know a hockey puck from a bowling pin. Most of the people
Yeah.
here in town, and I fortunately had a background with it growing up in New York when the 6-team league was in action, and virtually every guy that came over the boards was an all-star, even on the fourth line, because there were so
Yeah.
few players in the league.
Yeah.
So it was great, and it was just a tremendous tradition. And I think it's one of the great sporting traditions that you really. How is
Yeah, no,
this not? I
it's
mean,
cool. Yeah,
more
it's really,
lucrative of a thing for you. It's
yeah,
crazy.
it is. It is. I did a feature actually a couple of years ago with Emily Kaplan on ESPN, but
Uh
maybe
huh.
three years ago now. And what was really neat about it was for my kids to see, because I fly under the radar for the most part. I don't do a lot of, I've
Yeah.
tried to really, stay away from the whole Panther thing over the last few years, because I feel like it's not all part of the history, but it's
Sure.
their thing now, right? Like it's their story,
Right.
and I didn't want to be, oh, there's Mel be talking about his rat thing again and blah blah blah. So I've tried to stay in the background, but it's really cool, and I see them shooting rats at Marchant now. Rats shooting rats at a rat, which is great. But it's cool for my kids, and it's cool for me too. It's like I said, I'm glad that they've been able to survive down there. There was a period of time where I didn't know that they would, and and it's nice to have that small piece of history. And like, listen, who doesn't want to go to a game, especially at 10 and 12 years old and 40 or whatever, and throw something? You get to throw something on the ice. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
cool for a kid or a young fan or whatever. So hey, listen, I don't think it's going away. I think it's a part of the
No, never.
fabric. It's great to see the players. Uh, embracing it and having fun with it.
Sure.
I really enjoy that, to see them kind of really taking it to another level and shooting the things around. And so, yeah, no, it's a cool piece of history. And it's, like I said, it's always going to be there.
I don't think Barrasso was ever the same after he was bombarded with rats the first
He's
time
still
in that
stuck. He's
Boston
still
series.
stuck in the net. He's
Still
still
going
stuck
back
in the
and
net.
forth, going, what the hell is happening here? Scott, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking time to be on the show. And thanks so much for all that you had to say and all of the great work that you're doing for autism. Appreciate having you come on the program today.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it. Take care.
All right. Scott Mellanby, ladies and gentlemen, here. That was a lot of fun conversations. Grant Long on buckets. Scott Mellanby, a lot of reminiscing and a lot of interesting stuff coming on about the National Hockey League. And, of course, the Panthers now qualifying for their third consecutive Stanley Cup playoff. Will it be Edmonton? That will be decided tonight as we have the show going up on Bleacher Brothers on this Thursday morning, and there for you to watch into perpetuity, which is the beauty of the internet. Two great guys. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jeff DeForrest. I'll catch you next time on the next edition of Conversations.